Example 8.4.4. Total return, dividend yield, and capital gains. Okay, this one's going to be a little bit different than the previous problems. I know all the previous examples kind of built on each other and sort of look at things from different angles. This one's a different piece of information that often you may be interested in. So let's read the setup. It's going to be awfully familiar at this point. Suppose you're considering buying a stock. The stock is currently trading for $50. You expect the price in 1 year to be $51 and it will pay a dividend of $5. What is the stock's total expected return? What portion of the total return is from the dividend yield and what portion is from capital gains? Okay, this first part where we find the total expected return, we've already done that in the previous examples. So we'll walk through it again real quickly. But what this problem is getting at is that total return. If you've got a dividend paying stock, your total return is coming from two sources. You've got the return that's being generated from the dividend that's being paid, and you've got return that's being generated just by changes in the share price, which we call capital gains, or if it's declining, capital losses. But just as an umbrella term, we tend to call it capital gains. Okay, and what we'll find here is when we calculate the total return, and then we'll separately calculate the return from the dividend, which we call dividend yield, and then the return from capital gains, the return from price changes, we can add those two together. We can add the dividend yield and the capital gains together, and we'll come up with the total return. So we'll see that the total return actually is composed of those two particular parts. All right, so let's start by briefly or quickly walking through calculating the expected return, just because we've done it a couple of times now in the previous examples, but there is an error in this one too that I want to make sure I point out so folks don't get too tripped up by it. All right, so calculating total expected return, it's time value money problems. We'll follow our three-step process where we map out the cash flows. We've got a cash outflow of $50 today if we were to buy the stock, and then we'll have a cash inflow of $51 plus $5 if we were to receive the dividend of $5 1 year from now and then sell it for $51 right after we receive that dividend. And the question we want to answer is, what is the expected rate of return associated with these cash flows? If we actually experience these, what's our return? This is a lump sum cash flow, so we've got our three tools we could use for it. We're just going to walk through the formula one real quick because that's where the error is. We can use the present value of a lump sum formula, which we've got here, and just plug in the bits that we know. The present value is $50. The future value, we can combine the 51 and 5 here because they both happen at the end of year 1, so they're both expressed in end of year $1. And then we multiply that by our discount rate factor here of 1 over 1 plus r. If we condense that a little bit and just make it look a little cleaner, we'll see that the present value of 50 is equal to the future value of 56 divided by 1 plus r. No exponent here because it's just 1 year, so you could put the 1 up there and it doesn't matter. Typically we don't if it's a 1. Right, we want to solve for that r, so we multiply both sides by 1 plus r, which means it cancels out on the left-hand side and loads over onto the right-hand side where we have 50 times 1 plus r. We still want to get that r by itself, so we're going to divide both sides by 50 now. When we divide the left-hand side here by 50, it's going to cancel out because we'll have 50 in the numerator and 15 in the denominator. And over here, it'll become 56 divided by 50. That's what's supposed to be right here. This 60 divided by 50 should be 56 divided by 50. That's where the error is in the formulas. So let's just assume for now that 68 is actually 56. We still don't quite have r by itself. We need to subtract 1 off of both sides, which is what we see in the next step. And then if we actually run that out, we do the division and then subtract 1 from it, we'll get a total expected return of 12%. Now, let's pull this guy apart and see what part is from the dividend yield and what part is from capital gains. Okay, there's specific formulas for dividend yield and capital gains, which you have on your formula sheet. In fact, it's the only two equations from Chapter 8, where dividend yield is defined as the dividend at time period 1 divided by the price at time period 0. I guess we want to be more generic. We could say the dividend at t plus 1 divided by the price at t, but typically we would be calculating the dividend yield as of today anyway. And then capital gains is defined as the ending share price minus the beginning share price divided by the beginning share price. So this guy probably looks familiar, or the share price thing may throw you off. This is just a percentage change formula. We're just looking at the percentage change of price over whatever window we happen to be looking at. In this case, it's a 1-year window. All right, so let's do those one by one. Doesn't matter which one you do first. The dividend yield equal to dividend 1 over price 0 for this stock. The dividend 1 year from now is $5. And then the current price, well, here's another error right here. Well, this one I know they're aware of. I've sent it to them. Well, this $51 should be 50. The current price is 50, right? And the math, I'm pretty sure, still works out. Just the wrong numbers there. Let's check that real quick. That doesn't, well, of course, 5 divided by 50 is 10%. All right, so the dividend yield, this should be 5 divided by 50. And so the dividend yield is not 9.8%. This should be 10% right here, right? So that means the portion of this stock's return coming from the dividend yield is 10%. So of that 12% that it's offering, the actual return, the portion of that coming from the dividend is 10%. All right, then we can calculate the capital gains. Here we take the ending share price minus the beginning share price and divide it by the beginning share price. Well, the end on our timeline is 51. We subtract that from 50. So we had an increase in price of $1. We divide that by the base we started with of 50. So 1 divided by 50 turns out to be 2%, right? So our capital gains is 2%. So of that total return of 12%, only 2 of it is coming from capital gains, right? And we can check that just to make sure we came up with the right values. And why it didn't show up here, I'm not sure. Why the I or the editor didn't catch it. But I know the correction has been sent in. In fact, I'm pretty sure it was corrected, and I don't know why the errors are popping back up now. But what this should be is a total expected return is equal to the dividend yield plus capital gains. And so in this case, the total expected return, that should be a 10% dividend yield plus the 2% capital gains would work out to a total expected return of 12%, right? So sure enough, it turns out that total expected return is a combination of the return from capital gains and the return from the dividend yield.